different to January when I was here. It was like a packed house. So, but thank you all for coming. I think in January maybe more people care about their sort of diets and stuff maybe than they do in October. But thank you for coming anyway. And my name is Kelly Rose, and I am a registered nutritionist with the Association for Nutrition. Have been for the past 5 years. Just getting the light. That was probably a bit better where you can position my face. I was a teacher in the secondary school, taught food nutrition for 8 years because I thought that we could just teach all the kids to cook and then life would just be wonderful. But then realised there was a lot more to it, and so I decided to do my PhD in changing school food. So I've been working on reducing the obesogenic environment, and that's what I'm currently doing with my PhD. I have been veggie from the age 16, 17, many 20 odd years ago, and fully plant-based for the last 5 years, always transitioning to the vegan lifestyle. And it's just amazing. You do feel more aligned with just everything. It is a kind way of living, and honestly, it took me ages to cut out eggs. It took me ages because I knew there was something that I needed to know, but I didn't want to. So it took me quite a long time, probably a good 3 or 4 years, because I thought nutritionally they're great, and you taught these things that you should have this food because you'll get those nutrients from nowhere else. Now I know that's not necessarily true. So these are just some of the memberships that I'm included in. If anybody here is interested, I had my first paper published. I doubt you'll be that interested in my first paper because it's government decisions from Winston Churchill days to now on school food. So it's not the most exciting. It's not something I ever thought I would write, but it's just part of my discovery of going back of why we are where we are now with school food. But I wrote about teen health, and it was shared in the Independent. So if you wanted to have a look, it's independent.co.uk, and you just put Kelly Rose and look for school lunches, and it'll come up there if you were interested in that. Teenage health is my thing, and that's the main thing that I'm interested in. But what I wanted to do before I start talking about nutrition and my passion is that it's a whole thing. You can have the best diet in the world, but if you have a lot of stress, you're not sleeping well, you're not getting outdoors, you're not connecting and having fun with others, then it won't really matter what you do. So it's got to be the whole picture. So yes, I focus on nutrition, but very aware that all of that's really, really important as well. So it's an exciting time for plant-based nutrition because the research is pouring in literally from January, which was quite spooky because the day that I spoke, the evening that I spoke here, on that day, the Lancet hashtag #FixIt, it's on the next slide, I forgot what it was. But anyway, the new diet, the global diet that's being worked out by so many scientists and experts that we needed to do, that came out on the day that I was speaking, and since then just so many different reports, so much science, and actually as well the EPIC Oxford, I don't know if anybody's ever heard of those studies that started between 20 and 50 years ago. All the research is pouring in, and we haven't really had that before. There hadn't been vegetarian and vegan studies done. Mostly because they tend to be in countries, poor countries that didn't have access to meat, so it's very difficult to get that science. So it's all there. And the issue is we are dying of diseases that are largely preventable by living a certain way, eating a certain way, and it's just crazy. So I've just got a little bit about sort of some diseases, and I'll go into a bit more of sort of nutrition and what the experts say. So diabetes, 3.7 million diagnosed diabetes each year. It's pretty much an epidemic. Diabetes type 2 is linked to insulin binding receptors being clogged with fat. We often think of diabetes as all to do with sugar, but it's actually more to do with trans fats. That should be. I must have changed that lots of times, but it's still there as trans fats. It keeps wanting to go back. Saturated fats are the issue. And the issue as well, and I wanted to make that point here because ketogenic is so big at the moment, ketogenic diets, this low-carb, high-fat diet, people will say that a plant-based diet is quite restrictive. It is not restrictive with nutrients at all. Ketogenic diet is very restrictive with nutrients because you actually end up taking out whole grains and foods that are very high in B vitamins, very high in fibre, and these are the things you need for longevity. So yes, short-term weight loss, ketogenic, brilliant. Epilepsy, certain medical conditions, in certain issues of cancer, ketogenic's being used as well, but it's very short-term and long-term, it's not advised. So any of the science you see in terms of ketogenic is never going into long-term health, so it's being aware of that. Type 2 diabetes, impotence, reduction in eyesight. We're getting pre-diabetic kids, so that's how, you know, what we're seeing. So the other thing for, we had invited sort of doctors to come tonight, and we're hoping that we would get a few, but this is a cost-effective intervention. Lots of physician reports have actually said, and this was from 2013, the first one here, that it's low risk actually advising on a plant-based. And if you look at the plant-based health professionals, in fact, if you have your sheet in front of you, you'll see there's a website there that Kathy's put on there for you, and there's loads of resources on there, and these are people who are GPs around the country, medical professionals, all advising patients to go with the whole plant-based foods, discouraging meat, dairy, eggs, as well as refined foods. And what we find is now, again, so I'm not only talking about nutrition, it's really important to manage your stress. I need to listen to that actually at the moment. Turmeric and berries, I've actually been eating turmeric root the last couple of days. That's very healing. So turmeric is and ginger root in smoothies is extremely healing, and you're looking for anti-inflammatory if you want to heal from illness or disease. Some time-restricting feedings worked out really well. Women don't do as well with fasting as men, especially if there's any adrenal fatigue going on. So I would say for everybody it works well to do a 12 to 16 overnight fasting, because that's actually evolutionary how we've worked out. I really wanted to put this on because this is huge on the rise globally, dementia, and there's not many people you speak to that are not being touched by it in some way. And there's been a huge study come out recently, and I've got that on my next slide, that health lifestyle behaviours could prevent around 1/3 of cases of dementia, and that would be huge. The World Health Organisation has produced guidelines for reducing the risk of cognitive decline. So they've said a diet rich in fruits, vegetables, whole grains and legumes, whilst limiting saturated fat from animal foods, processed foods and added sugar. And that's because a whole food plant-based diet reduces inflammation and oxidative stress, and that's why it's very difficult for disease to live in the body when you're reducing those things. So this was the study, obviously just recently published, October 2019, very new, and it was 16,948. That's a really large study. And the importance of this is they actually started at baseline, age 45 to 74, and they re-interviewed 20 years later, and they were scored according to, it was actually 4 different diets. There was the HPDI, the Healthy Plant-Based Diet Index, the PDI, the Plant-Based Diet Index, DASH, which is one to reduce the risk of strokes and heart disease, and Mediterranean diet as well. So all have in common those high intakes of plant-based foods, the low intakes of saturated fat and processed foods. The participants that scored the highest on all 4 of them had significantly reduced incidence. So if they're scoring high on the HPDI and the rest of them, they're having very little, if any, animal product. And it was 20 to 30% reduced risk, and again, that's huge in terms of dementia. So that's a study, I think, that will really change things. Oh, so that was it, hashtag food can fix it. So this was the Eat Lancet Commission report, and this is what basically we've got a lot of environmental. Last time I had actually a couple of people who'd been told by the kids to come here who were studying environmental sciences, because they said they would actually sit in lectures and just realising that they can't eat meat and listen to this, listen to what's going on in the planet and the climate change. So this was a lot of experts. The only people that have actually been able to, well, they haven't really successfully done it, but they've tried to build a case against this, is because they say that it's unrealistic for people to follow a whole food plant-based diet. I don't think that's true, but everybody is different, and we'll go through a couple of reasons tonight. But 50% of the plate being fruit and vegetables would make a huge difference. So it's known as crowding out. You might have heard of it. A lot of scientists use the term crowding out, where you actually put so many veggies on the plate that you're virtually crowding out everything else, because we do eat far too much protein, which has really increased the risks of cancer, and even just too much iron in itself causes huge inflammation in the body. So this was Professor Walter Willett, MD, which is one of the people who, and I'll let you read that yourself, but he was one of the experts as part of the Food Can Fix It Health. The Lancet Commission report is out there for anybody to see and have a look at. Okay, this is a very recent campaign, which is the British Dietetic Association. We've come a really long way in the last couple of years, and it's because everything that we do, so everything that we do in the UK or other countries guidelines-wise are informed by the World Health Organization. So they've obviously come along and said to all these countries, all of us, can we reduce meat, and all these different things. And basically what's fantastic is the British Dietetic Association. There's actually a video there, and I'm not sure if I'll have the time tonight, but if so, I'll go back and see it. But if you want to have a look at the One Blue Dot campaign, it's the Dietetic Association talking about this and how we need to reduce our meat consumption. So this is the Plant-Based Health Professionals UK. There's loads of resources on there, and they've redone the Eat Well Guide, which is fantastic. So they can show you that you can have everything from a whole food plant-based diet, and it's, yeah, that's there for you. So we're now nearly at the 12-month mark of the Nourish You plant-based study. So myself and Dr. Laura Brown and the Physique Health Club in Darlington, we had 22 participants who've been absolutely amazing. And I think because I transitioned not overnight, I was a bit uncomfortable. I wrote the programme, but we said that because it was a study, we wanted to see what would happen. And what we did was, we got them to go sort of cold turkey, really, forgive the pun, but 3 weeks was completely everything that causes inflammation in the body. So inflammation means aging, basically. Aging of the cells, cellular damage, cause of illness, cause of disease, cause of aging. So inflammaging, you could call it. So anything that causes that in the body is sugar, meat, dairy and alcohol. So these women were very brave. In fact, until the last cohort, so we had 4 together, we had nobody that was even vegetarian, and they just took this on. In fact, one of the ladies said this was more challenging. The thought of it, not actually doing it, because she was great when she was doing it, but the thought of it was more challenging than actually running a marathon. for her, which was great because she just felt amazing when she did it. So we had mixed from the 3 weeks. We had some people who had headaches and went through a detox sort of thing. We had people who just all of a sudden felt amazing. One thing we did notice, the manager of the gym, literally within days, is just saying, wow, like the skin, like your skin's glowing, and actually for a man to notice anyway is a good thing. We couldn't actually, which was quite sad, the only way we could actually get people to participate was to market it as weight loss, because nobody really wanted to be healthy. They just wanted to lose weight, and they did lose weight, quite a lot of it. In fact, in the first 3 weeks, everybody lost between half a stone and a stone, depending on what they needed to lose. But what we wanted to do was see how they could reset their body, increase their immunity, change the taste buds, because that happened as well. They would start to taste foods in a different way. And then we gave them the flexibility to introduce things back if they wanted to after 21 days. Because it was a study, we didn't want to say, you have to do this. But absolutely, I think in the 6th week, nobody chose to introduce anything back. I think a couple of people introduced eggs. I think it was maybe 1 or 2 a week. But most people felt so good they just didn't want to go back. So we took this from the health point of view and the weight loss. But it really changed my view, because I thought, I'm a great believer in habits, and you should do one thing at a time sometimes, because it can be overwhelming. But actually what happened was these women, they came out, they were out of their comfort zone, and they surprised themselves. So they did something that was so uncomfortable, they shocked themselves so much that they thought, actually, you know what, if I can do this, I can do anything. And so we saw their confidence soaring, and yeah, their skin improved, hormones. We had quite a few actually that said they wanted to lose weight, but they really had these terrible hormonal symptoms, and they really wanted to get rid of them. Virtually gone in most of the cases. We actually picked up on one lady's blood pressure was so high. She's actually a year down the line, she's lost nearly 4 stone. Her blood pressure, we picked up, as I say, it was too high. She went to the doctors. What they do is they give you a machine to take home to check it daily. And within a couple of weeks her blood pressure went down, and she's doing amazing. Improved bowel habits. We had a few that were feeling really bloated at the beginning, but started to that went away. Energy levels improved. But yeah, it's been wonderful, and we've actually collated the first set of data. So we've done our first draft of the paper, ready to publish, and we can report there's been a significant lowering of cholesterol. I shouldn't say this is a shame, but it is slightly a shame that all of our participants were healthy. We were trying to get people that were a little bit unhealthy, but it was just difficult to get the participants. But actually, they were fairly healthy. Yes, we had a few that had blood pressure. It was things that were quite normal issues. But the fact that we saw a significant lowering of cholesterol in fairly healthy individuals, I think is really testament to the plant-based, the PDI index. And we'll be taking our 12-month data. So far, we've never seen anything like we've done over 12 months. So it'll be interesting to see. Sorry, I should have done a bit of a warning for this slide. This is the lady actually who had really high blood pressure at the beginning. So this was her at week 1, week 6, week 11. I mean, bless her, how brave she was to actually have the photos done. And she's just, carried on with the gym. She just looks absolutely amazing, changed her whole lifestyle, has never gone back to meat, dairy. In fact, she said it made her absolutely wretch, the thought of it, after even the 3 weeks. So she's never gone back to eating. And this particular lady, because you can't see her face, I can tell you, this particular lady had really low mood, sort of depression symptoms, probably out of all of our participants, reported virtually nothing. Her mental health and everything improved. So absolutely amazing. And yeah, this isn't Sarah, because I know you know one of the ladies, but you know this isn't Sarah. But you even said to Casey that Sarah, it's changed her life, hasn't it? She's done amazing. Yeah, we've seen, it's just been really exciting to see these women just change their whole lives. It's fantastic. So, one of the main things was fibre, and I honestly I bang on about fibre all the time. The UK target now is 30 grams, it used to be 25. The average intake is 10 to 15 grams for, that's actually for the UK, but it just happened to be that all our participants were meeting that that Western diet average, and all of them were 30 grams plus after this, so we took food recalls and we could have a look at it. Now, increased fibre reduces risk of colon cancers, breast cancer, diabetes, heart disease, obesity, premature death, on and on and on and on. The programme is based on consuming whole foods, vegetables, fruits, pulses, whole grains. When I go through some different foods at the end, these are the meals really that everybody were having, so you can have a look at that. I think that everybody, we all want to make a difference. We all want to be needed. We all want to do something that contributes to humanity. And if we don't feel like we're I don't know, you don't feel like we're doing enough or we are enough. But I think that when I know this was my experience, when I chose to eat and live a vegan lifestyle, I just felt like it was something that I could do as an individual. And I think that whatever reason, to even make small differences, every time we eat we can make a difference. And I think it's probably only one area that we can actually make the most difference as an individual. Okay, so I just want to make this point because when I was first veggie, vegan, whatever, I've been weird for so long, I'm starting to feel more normal. It's quite disconcerting. But the fact, you know, I remember reading this for the first time a few years ago on the NHS and just going, oh, I can share it with everybody that the NHS say that you can get all the nutrients from like a vegan, plant-based diet, and the British Dietetic Association even a little bit later, but still saying the same, the American Dietetic Association, a lot of the heart disease stuff has come from America, and they're doing amazing research. We are seeing for the first time University of East Anglia doing PhDs in plant-based study, which is very exciting because we've not done that before in the UK, so that's really good. I've got a few students in here, maybe that's something you could do at some point. So yeah, I've been told before that I'm extreme. That's quite a while ago now, and I think that's more of a belief but not necessarily a truth. It's an embedded ideology. So there has been some resistance to plant-based or vegan lifestyle, which is social norms are changing, but I think it's really relevant to talk about where the negative ideological bias comes from, because I think that, you know, I ate meat up until 16, 17. I was told that, you know, I needed to have meat, and I'm sure that's part of, because I didn't really know too much. I knew that I didn't want to eat an animal, but I didn't really know too much about what was going on. But I'm sure the fact that my father kept telling me to eat it was one of the reasons why I didn't, you know, that teenage rebellion thing. However, there is this thing it's so untrue that we need to sort of think about a little bit more. I mean, barriers to research in the past, there wasn't science around, basically because people traditionally lived in countries, India. I mean, I've been on holiday and gone to an Indian restaurant and obviously asked for a vegan meal or whatever, and they've started chatting to me and saying, you know, this is maybe in Spain or Greece or whatever, they're saying, oh, my family are vegan, my grandparents are 80-something, they run rings around us, and, you know, it was more normal, but there was no research really out there. it was difficult to access meat, so those countries tend to be more nutrient deficient. And restrictive vegan diets have been associated with eating disorders in the past, and the cultural bias against vegan diets means it's being resistant to funding research. So we've even seen that the meat industry is getting quite worried, because we've seen in the last couple of months funded studies by meat and dairy industry. And so you've got to be careful, yeah, who's funded these studies. So this is from the 1960s, when I was sort of researching, you know, why my PhD is all about changing behaviours, and when I was teaching kids in school, I was always looking at social norms and how we can actually change behaviour and why we believe what we believe. I'm really interested in sort of that psychology of eating. And if you see there, I mean, people were actually encouraged to have other animal products if they couldn't have protein. And it was the China study, I think, that's probably one of the best books in terms of explaining why too much protein is not good for us and what's happened there. But this just showed that this was from a scientific paper in the 1960s saying the risk of deficiency was much higher in a vegetarian diet. Bearing in mind the 1960s was taken from the places where people were not getting enough nutrients. And the fact is, when you eat an animal, it's a very easy, convenient way to get lots of nutrients, but not fibre, by the way. But an easy way to get nutrients. But the fact is, we can get all the nutrients from everywhere else. So yes, if we needed to have it, brilliant. Okay, I understand it, but we don't need to. So social norms are changing, it's more socially acceptable, more people are making informed, kind choices. It's a paradigm shift, so we're really thinking differently about our health, how we can help the planet. So obviously, being a nutritionist, these are the sorts of things that I'm not perfect by any means, but you'll not get me eating one of them sausage rolls, no way. And I really find it hard, I think, because I've not eaten meat since I was 16, 17, I find it hard eating meat analogues, whereas my husband will have them, my kids a little bit more. But I find that difficult because I haven't eaten them for so long. Sometimes I feel like I am eating meat still, so it's really weird texture. And I have absolutely no problem with them at all. I think it's great. And I think cruelty-free options are great, but I think we've got to be really wary that we need to keep these foods a rarity for our health. So there's a term, the junk food vegan now, because there are a lot of vegans that eat lots of junk food. And yes, it's exciting because sometimes you can't always get that vegan cake. And oh, I love a vegan cake, honestly, I love cake. Absolutely. But it's about, you know, rarely foods. And I read a book quite a long time ago called Salt, Sugar, Fat by Michael Moss. Really fascinating book about the food industry. We did quite a few sketches at school actually to teach the kids about the bliss point. So this is actually a food industry term, the bliss point, where the scientists, and this has been happening for years and years and years, post-war, where, you know, women were going out to work for the first time. They didn't want to be just stuck in the kitchen. They wanted more convenience foods. Food industry, you know, demand for these quick foods. They found that if they could add in the right amount of fat, sugar, salt, and additives or whatever it may be, it can basically light up those brain reward systems. We've probably all heard that sugar lights up the same reward system as like heroin, although not quite as the addiction process, but it still lights up the same part of the brain, and it bypasses hunger cues. Hence why people eat McDonald's and they could eat another one after. Eat a pasty, you could eat another one after. It doesn't fill you. It's bypassing those hunger cues. So it's really important that we're aware of all of that going on. So this, I've just discovered this week, and I was quite excited about it because this was part of my role as Head of Health Education in a secondary school in Middlesbrough. I was always talking about these sorts of things and trying to get kids to sort of understand how they are vulnerable targets, but in a way that they could understand rather than me just saying that to them. And this is actually a group of young people, but they have an experiment. And I don't know how I am for time. And then wondering if we could maybe watch this or not.
Oh, yeah, half an hour. About 40 minutes.
Right, okay, good. So I think we might be able to watch it. Oh my gosh. Sorry. Oh no, it's not, it's fine, isn't it? But if you are interested in knowing about this experiment, you can have a look at Bite Back 2030, and it's basically quite scary how the food industry plants things in your mind and how psychologically they got a group of kids and they gave them this huge menu with so many things on, but they planted the ideas through Instagram, through social media posts, through them sitting in the taxi on the way there and having this chicken thing in front of them, and they gave them this envelope after they'd chosen their meal to tell them they knew what they were going to choose, and then showed them how that they planted that idea of choosing that meal in their heads, and it's quite scary but so true. So yeah, just like I mentioned earlier, that it's really important that we're focusing on abundance and nourishing. A whole food plant-based is not restrictive. It's not cutting out nutrients at all. In fact, the other thing that I didn't mention about the study is we did nutrient profiling, and the participants had a better nutrient profile than they did previous to what they were eating. And they would probably say that they ate a fairly healthy diet as well, you know. Everybody always says to me, oh yeah, well I eat quite healthy. You know, the normal Western diet way of eating isn't really healthy anymore. Okay. So this is just a few things starting us off there. So protein, amino acids, we have about 9 essential that we can't make ourselves, that are the building blocks. But what you find is if you eat a good range of different plant-based foods, because of course all vegetables have some protein in, so if we have a good range of foods, we are going to get the 9 essential. So that's another myth that people say, oh no, you can't get the right amount of protein. You can, as long as you consume a good variety. But to be honest, like anybody that questions me about nutrient deficiencies, I find it quite funny, because actually most people are nutrient deficient, so it doesn't matter what diet we're eating. You know, most of us are nutrient deficient, so eating a range of foods and colours is going to make a difference. There's just a few of the top plant-based protein sources there. Broccoli and asparagus. There's this ORAC scale for the antioxidant scales, and asparagus I think is pretty much, I think it may be the top one, and broccoli's not far under that as well. So they're I suppose what you could call the real superfoods that have so many nutrients in there, the iron, the vitamin C, all the amazing foods. Nutrients, should I say. So another one I get quite a lot is, well, if you're meant to be vegan, why do we have to supplement B12? And this is a huge sort of misunderstanding, really. Yes, I believe that we should supplement B12, but it's actually made by bacteria. It's pretty much, you could call it a bacteria. It's found in dirt and soil. So years ago, we'd be getting our vegetables, we wouldn't wash them as well, and we'd be getting our B12 quite happily through vegetables. We were getting that from the soil for hundreds and hundreds of years. Organic veggies that haven't been washed too well, you may still get, depending on the soil. Maybe if it was like, I know if you're local, Croft Biodynamic Farm, I think you probably have B12 in their soil, but maybe not, so just in case the supplement's really good. Also factory farm animals, definitely, but most animals are supplemented themselves because animals and humans are unable to produce B12. It's produced in the soil. So, okay, I rest my case. We need it for brain health. So there's a hormone called homocysteine in the body, and if we don't get rid of it, it becomes toxic if we don't get rid of it, and it can cause brain health issues. Dr. Greger years ago did a study. He sort of thought, oh well, if you're vegan or vegetarian, you must live longer than carnists, who eats meat. And what they found was it was pretty much the same age of mortality that people were dying, but people who eat meat were dying of heart disease, cancer, and the people who were vegan, vegetarian, or mainly vegan, were dying of more brain health issues. So that's why B12 is so important. The other one is omega-3. Walnuts and flaxseed. By the way, if anybody has high blood pressure, or know anybody who's high blood pressure, flaxseed, and new studies just come out to say that flaxseed, a couple of tablespoons of flaxseed a day, reduces blood pressure. But it's great that those are great sources of omega-3. But I would just say, just from a protective point of view, I would probably still get your omega-3 from algae. I get mine from Cytoplan, although I went to the Heather Mills factory recently and she gave me her omega-3. She still didn't tell me how to buy it or how to get it, because I don't think it's on sale yet. But it's got higher level of DHA and EPA than Cytoplan, so it'll be a good one once we can get hold of it. B12 food sources as well. You've got nutritional yeast, spirulina, so there is other things you can add to your food to get more B12. Iodine. So we need that. It's particularly important in pregnancy, iodine, because obviously it's a development of the brain. Seaweed, kelp, nori, a lot of people, so Dr. Gemma Newman, her children, she's a GP down south, and her kids are plant-based, and she gets them to just eat nori sheets and things like that, and I know you can get the seaweed sheets now. I don't think my girls would do that, but if you start them young and that's what they've eaten, then that's brilliant. Add in small amounts of salads, stews, cooking's a really good way to get adequate iodine if you're not supplementing. But if you get a good multivitamin and mineral, which I actually advise to anybody anyway, because like I say, we're mostly nutrient deficient anyway, unless we're eating all these things every day. And I'm a nutritionist, and I just think sometimes it is difficult to get everything in every day. Vitamin D, very important. UK Public Health advises that we have 10 micrograms a day from autumn to spring, because we just don't get enough sunshine, and it's a hormone rather than a vitamin D, and we make it in the skin from sunshine mainly. So everybody should be supplementing that, but like I say, if you get a good multivitamin mineral with it all in, then you can just take the one. Plant-based sources of calcium. So this is another one. People say, oh, you know what, if I don't get enough calcium. Tahini is a brilliant one. I'm quite obsessed with tahini, especially as the Happy Pair, if you haven't heard of them. They are two amazing guys who are twins. If you want some new recipes, YouTube, you talk about recipes, YouTube have, go on Happy Pair, and they do 2 to 3 minutes, and they're pretty gorgeous as well, so that easy on the eye to watch as well. But they have really great recipes. I make their sourdough bread quite often, but I'll go on and I'll just watch them do it while I'm making it, because it's only sort of a 4-minute video, so I can keep stopping it and make it, so they're really great. But we did an after-school club with the kids, and we did tahini. They have a tahini chocolate fudge, and basically was tahini, sea salt, maybe a bit of maple syrup, although I just put, if I want a bit of a chocolate fix, sometimes put tahini a bit of sea salt, pink salt, and cacao. And they have goji berries that you could put, I think we put cranberries when we did it with the kids, and they absolutely loved it. So lots of good recipes on there. Most dairy-free milks, I've just done some research, and I've written an article for theconversation.com, which should be out quite soon, on plant-based milks. But all of these different foods have lots of calcium in, so you can see that, you know, beans on toast, you know, there's some very simple things you can have where you're having nutrients in there. Beans on toast with nutritional yeast on there, you get your B12 as well. Oh, and a really good tip as well, especially, this is quite good for young people as well, or kids, to get all of their calcium in. So a handful of greens, avocado, because it makes it creamy. Even if you don't like avocado, if you put it in a smoothie with some banana and either peanut butter or tahini, bananas, berries, and you bananas or berries, sorry, and you whiz it up. Lovely. It's a great way to get loads of calcium in. So this is part of my research that I've done for the article, and it's quite fascinating for me to do anyway, because I learned so much more than I even knew. I already sort of knew that soy milk is always used when somebody has a cow's milk allergy, because it's got, obviously, just the same, if not a bit more protein, same calcium, and nutrients in there. However, lots of people have soy allergen as well. So pea milk is actually made from yellow split peas. It's going to be the new hero. I just thought it was absolutely brilliant. You can see from the calcium amounts there, 186 milligrams as opposed to the cow's milk 119, 3.2 grams of protein, pretty much the same as cow's milk there, and obviously lower in calories as well, and much lower in your saturated fat. And it's very. So the other thing about soy milk is it can be quite costly. GMOs, there's some issues with not being crops and the environmental cost. Whereas in terms of pea milk, it's very cheap to grow. The yellow split peas. They did sensory tests and the acceptability of the taste, the creaminess of it came out really high, much better, because sometimes people say soy milk is a bit beany, so they said, or even though pea milk sounds quite strange, that it was much better in flavour, texture and all of this sort of business. So the only issue at the minute we've got is only 2 companies make it, and they're very small companies, so we need somebody like Alpro or the larger companies to take on board pea milk as well, for us to be able to buy it inexpensively, so it's not easy to get hold of at the minute. But definitely, if you know somebody who has got, you know, some allergens to soya, I'd say that is a really good one. And there's a real difference in protein between milks. So almond milk, I tend to mix them anyway, but can you see you've got less than 0.5 protein as opposed to these. So people think all plant-based milks are the same, but they're not. And really, to be honest, I don't rely on plant-based milks to get my protein from there anyway, because I eat a lot of variety. However, if you were, then it would be worth taking into account. You know, things like oat milk are not very high in protein, but great for an alternative for tea or coffee. Usually the best ones tends to be oat milk or coconut milk. Okay, just in case you weren't sure, just got that one there. But yeah, I just always think that we've got, we really have this focus on what we shouldn't eat, and sort of this restrictive focus as human beings. But I think that it's time to now turn that on its head and actually obsess about what we are eating and what we are putting in our bodies. Okay, so just a few things as a bit of a summary there. A variety of beans, nuts and seeds. Get your omega-3 fatty acids daily. Check supplementation. Eat a rainbow, be active every day, reduce your processed foods and cook from scratch wherever possible. and just enjoy your food, celebrate your lifestyle. So I've just added a couple of things on here about the dietary acid load, because there was a recent study, and it was on 60 and 70-year-olds who ate just a normal Western healthy diet, because what happens is we don't get chronic problems over time. So it's going back to those inflammatory foods I was talking about. There's not immediate effects, it happens over time, and our body can deal with so much. So you get a lot of people talking about the alkaline diet, and a lot of people saying it's rubbish. But the reason why that is because our body cannot change in its pH, like our blood pH, I'll get it out in a minute, our blood pH, we have homeostasis, our body has buffering systems to make sure that the pH balance in our body stays. So what people say is no matter what you eat, that's not going to change. But what does happen is we have to implement a buffering system. So things like magnesium, minerals in our body, so magnesium, phosphorus, zinc, potassium, especially in the bones, they're leached out as part of this buffering system. So very, very slowly over time, it causes problems with an acid load, and then you get joint issues, you start aching, and you know, all these other issues that happen that we blame on ageing is actually from the dietary acid load. So there's Crunk. So the real paleo man, we have this idea, especially when you look at some of these paleo diets, that you know, we just ate meat. And like I said before, that yes, meat was there as if we needed it to survive, but the reality is we had very, very little meat. It was a very high alkaline diet that we ate. And the hunter-gatherer diets were 87% alkaline producing. And we're at a very different picture now. Okay, so we don't really need that bit. So just because I do a lot around mental health and food and mood, I thought I'd mention the calming mineral magnesium. There's lots, I've actually got a post there, my site's passionatenutrition.co.uk, and if you're interested in finding out how you get more magnesium, it's one of those, there's actually, it's involved in about 600 different processes in the body, so pretty much most things can come down to maybe a magnesium deficiency. So hence why there's a lot of people talking about magnesium at the moment, and lots of people supplementing with magnesium. But one thing magnesium is found to support is that dietary acid load. So what they did was 60 to 70-year-old people were actually taking magnesium supplements, and I actually did this with my dad as well. He was like jumping up on his paddleboard all of a sudden and saying that he felt amazing. So but that's what happened. They were taking magnesium and some other minerals, but specifically magnesium to improve issues, so it's something you can take away. But soaked nuts and seeds are high in magnesium, avocado, quinoa, dark chocolate, tofu, quinoa again, I put there. Oh, quinoa twice, there you go. Quinoa is a seed, so it does have a lot more nutrients and protein than other grains because it is actually a seed. Okay, so just a little bit about iron, heme iron from meat or fish. Heme iron does contribute to inflammation. Too much of it is really, really not good. There's enough science around to tell us that. Non-heme iron, plant-based sources, your beans, legumes, green leafy vegetables, nuts, seeds. The thing is, because we need vitamin C to absorb the iron, what you find is if you're eating a whole food plant-based diet, you're going to get more iron, you're going to absorb it better. That is what we found with, again, the study, that the iron that they were consuming was actually higher than it was previous, and they were eating meat before. So it's another myth, because you find that anemia is, usually meat eaters anyway. Avoid tea at your meal times because tannins block absorption from the tea, so try and have it in between but not while you're eating. Okay, I've got a little video there but I'm not sure it's going to work, so if it does I'll play it later. I'll try it later. So I think I've mentioned this anyway, as long as you're consuming enough calories, so it's all to do with enough energy and enough calories, then you will get enough protein quite easily. Okay, the other thing that I get asked about quite a lot, and this again is fairly new science, because a few years ago there was a lot saying that you increase your risk of cancer because of the estrogen in soy products, but actually what they found was it's a completely different estrogen in soy, the plant-based estrogen, than it is in an animal or a human being really anyway. And it actually, they found that analysis showed that it reduced, I do apologise for that, reduced prostate cancer by 26%, which again is a huge thing. Low risk of reoccurrence of breast cancer. So soybeans, things like tofu, really good way to get it. Overly processed sort of soy milk, soy yogurts, not always as good in terms of anybody who's got a history of breast cancer. I would say discuss that with a specialist, but definitely things like tempeh, edamame beans, brilliant. Okay, just a little slide there just to show us where zero fibre, phytochemicals, antioxidants, prebiotics, plant sterols. Here we've got beans and lentils, so high in all of those great things. In fact, well, actually I've got a slide on that, so I'll say that later. But planning is key. It is, if anybody's ever embarked on any sort of healthy way of living, you know that planning and shopping is really key. But actually, once you get into them habits, it becomes easier and easier, and there's less planning time needed. Read your labels, check your labels well, and enjoy experimenting. See it as a really exciting thing to be enjoying the food. I mean, look at that colour. So just some ideas for breakfasts. You've got your mashed avocado on toast, wholemeal of course. Smoothies are a great way, you can add all sorts of things in smoothies. Weetabix with a dairy-free milk and a banana or berries. Oats, perfect prebiotic, fibre, especially if it's overnight. The oats tend to become more probiotic if they're left to ferment a little bit overnight. And you've got your beans on toast, tofu or chickpea scramble, my favourite breakfasts ever. Most of these, so like the tofu chickpea scramble I've got on my site if you've not made them before. Veggie sausages, tomatoes, mushrooms, berries, cinnamon, plant-based yogurts, mashed banana. There's absolutely loads, but they're just a few, just to give you some ideas. Smoothies are definitely my go-to, just because there's so many things you can do, and one of my favourite things is avocado, banana, cacao, nut butter. Oh my gosh, an avocado smoothie, beautiful. But you can put all sorts into that. I mean, I often have like cucumber, greens, celery, whatever's in there, with lemon wedge and flaxseed. I always put flaxseed in there on my porridge every day. Mason jars, they just look great, and you can put all sorts in there as well. You can make a little sort of tahini or tamari dressing. got your broccoli in there, edamame beans in there, some nuts in there. So they always look fabulous. So you can build a jar of variety. You can have quinoa in there, sweet potato, boiled potato, brown rice, rice noodles, spinach, kale, rocket, spring greens, veggies, fruits, grated carrots, beetroot, sweet corn, cabbage, onion, cucumber, tomatoes. Sun-dried tomatoes always add a nice thing as well. And I know we're more into the winter now, so nice homemade soups are really good if you're making packed lunches and things for work. Hummus, beans, nuts, chickpeas, lentil patties, dals, tofu, optional flavour dressings. So I use a lot of like lemon or cider vinegar, chilli flakes, tahini, sea pink salt, black pepper. Tamari's my favourite, so I'm always putting tamari on everything. Tamari on sweet potato wedges, tamari on veggies, tamari on tofu. So I'll tend to get the firm, slice it, put tamari on, black pepper, put it in the oven, roast it. Oh, absolutely gorgeous. Obviously garlic's a good flavouring as well. Hummus, falafel, salad wrap, beans on toast. That I kept telling when the ladies were starting the programme. I mean, they all reported feeling like shock and horror of having to go home and like opening the fridge and just going, oh, what can I eat? And the first week was a bit sort of mad for them. But
sorry, wrong dog.
And I just used to say, if in doubt, just start with beans on toast, beans on jack potato, lots of iron in beans, vitamin C, one of your 5 a day. Can't go wrong with baked beans, as long as they're veggie ones. Okay, lots of different snacks as well. So obviously roasted seeds, nuts, chickpeas. You can, again, you can add tamari. Obsessed with tamari. The good thing about tamari is though as well, it is actually fermented, so it's a probiotic, so it's helping your gut garden, feed your good bacteria. Fruits and veggies, a variety, apple slices and nut butter, banana and handful of almonds, plant-based yogurt. One of my favourite desserts is you get the silken tofu with your dark chocolate and just blitz it up. And it's a little pudding. Again, it's beautiful if you like chocolate, it's fab. You do not have to give up chocolate. And banana and ice cream, brilliant, because you can put mint, vanilla bean extract, cacao nibs, raspberry. You can put all sorts in your banana and ice cream. So you just peel your bananas, freeze them, and then blitz them up into nice cream. So you need a really good blender. Dinner. So these are all my sort of different dinners. So you've got a sweet potato there with some sort of, probably a stir-fried something. Everything is either stir-fried or roasted in my house. People say, how have you got time to cook? I don't really, I chuck everything in. So just keep it simple, everyone can cook. Like I used to say to my young people at school, I find it quite hilarious because until I had my own children, I didn't really cook. I was brought up on junk food really. I have amazing parents, they're fabulous, I'm not going to call them parents at all, but they worked a lot and it was just convenience foods, and that's what it was. Or my mum was always on Weight Watchers, so it was like a Weight Watchers meal, and then you were so hungry you'd have 10 bags of crisps or something after. So I found it quite funny that I ended up teaching kids to cook when I didn't even know how to cook till I was probably about 25. And even then it was all it was fairly simple things. But I always used to say, I say to the kids, as long as you can make soup, a curry, a chilli, stir fry, you can do anything, because it's just literally just changing out the vegetables and things that you're putting in. So roasted veggies with something like brown rice, quinoa, baked potatoes, a baked sweet potato, absolutely gorgeous. You can have with hummus or bean chili, or just with salad and a tahini dressing. Hummus is the easiest thing in the world to make. Once you've got that recipe, you don't need to put oil in it either. It's much nicer, you don't need it. Experiment with your flavours, add in rosemary to your roasted veggies, roasted potatoes with rosemary is lovely. Tamari is amazing, sorry, I know I'm really obsessed with it. Miso paste is a good one as well, which again is fermented. In stir fry, sprinkle on your veggies. Smoked paprika is one of my favourite flavours. Curry spices, chipotle is lovely as well, so it gives that barbecue flavour. If you haven't got much time, tin of butter beans. Blitzed with a hand blender or and some stock if you want some optional spices. You've got quick soup and you've got protein and fibre in it. You've got a complete little meal there. So that's literally just butter beans and some stock. So it can be as easy as simple. So this is the blue zones. Has anybody heard of the blue zones? Okay, so these are places in the world where people are living 100 plus. So when I discovered Dan Buettner, he was a writer for the National Geographic, and he decided to do some looking at different populations. So when I look at a study or I look at sort of research, I'm looking at not only something where there's a randomised controlled trial, but what's working in big populations. Actually, I've got to say, green tea is coming out as hitting every box in terms of anti-inflammatory, reducing risks of diseases, ageing, everything. There's about 5 different pillars of sort of health, and green tea came out as being one of those ones for that. So I just thought I'd mention that because that came. The reason why they did a lot of study on green tea was because they were looking at these populations living a long time, and green tea was something that they were having. So they weren't trying to live past 100, their environment's making it easy. So we're talking the Adventists in California, who are the vegan and vegetarian, the Okinawa in Japan, Nicoya, Costa Rica, and Ikaria in Greece. These were these populations which we call the blue, he termed the blue zones, and now he works with different authorities in America to try and help their areas become more like blue zones. So the commonalities were very little or no meat, greens daily, veggies, very little cow dairy, and very active community. So I think that's really interesting, especially as even before this time, there was a place in Russia called Abkhazia, and scientists went there in the 70s, and they were reported to be living 150 plus, but actually when they looked, it wasn't so much that, it was 100 plus. But what was great about that was they were celebrating they didn't even have a word for old age, they celebrated long-lived, and we don't respect our elderly like some of these countries do. And it's just like the way we look at the elderly and the way we think of aging is so negative compared to these different countries. And the fascinating thing about Abkhazia was when the scientists looked at like people at 80-year-old that didn't have the macular degeneration and the eyesight problems and all these different things that we contribute to aging. It just shows us a lot of it could be mindset as well. Okay, so I self-published a book a few years ago about mental health by young people. It's actually a parental guide for teachers or anybody with young people. And it just, I think because teenagers, I'm drawn to teenagers and I want to improve health, I did lots of research on the adolescent brain. I worked a lot with looked after children and lots of children who were self-harming, and I just really felt like I wanted to find out why and what was happening with the teenage brain. And there's a pruning process going on, there's a mass construction going on with the teenage brain. And adolescents are from the age of 10 to 21. And in fact, the World Health Organization sometimes say 24. So that impulsivity that's happening at that age and that hampered decision making means that they are vulnerable targets to marketing and the issues that they have in terms of emotional ones as a young person, the self-esteem, the self-confidence. And I think that everything's about self-confidence, everything's about self-esteem. And I think that if we can improve that and help a young person understand what's going on with their brain, and us as parents understand and teachers to understand what's going on, when that child is saying, when that teacher's sort of saying, why did you do that? And that child said, I don't really know. 90% of the time they really don't know why they did that. They just made that impulsive decision. So I think sometimes we can understand those things. Teenage drinking as well. There was actually something in Darlington paper, a Darlington local paper, a few weeks ago. Darlington parents actually buying alcohol for their young people. It's becoming a bit of a social norm in really great families, but actually there's so much issues with the liver and the long-term damage that can happen that we need to do something different. But I noticed that Iceland, they actually used evidence-based strategies as a nation to actually reduce teenagers drinking. Obviously not the parents buying it, but the teenagers drinking. And one was for parents to spend more time with the children. I think that, I know that that's what happened to me. When our teenagers are getting really nasty and not very nice, we want to back off a little bit and just not leave them alone, and it can affect our self-esteem. But actually they want you to hang in there, they're testing you, and they're testing themselves and their own worthiness as well. So that's really what my book is about. I've got them there if anybody wants to buy them. £50, £5. They're £10.99 online, but they're £5 if you want to buy one here tonight. But that's that. I have a nutrient deficient assessment. To check if you're nutrient deficient, assessment online free, passionatenutrition.co.uk. Also, I'm not sure if it's on there yet. Oh, so recipes, Happy Pear, recipes for happiness, dead easy, brilliant recipes. That's just every single participant voted this one of the Nourish You study as their favourite recipe book. Definitely, and they're fab boys, they're brilliant. Good book, Michael Greger, How Not to Die, literally every disease, every bit of science backing up, that is fantastic. And the other thing, if you want to test your diversity in your fibre, I've got a free download on my site called, it's 13/7. And what you do is you just print out the worksheet and you fill in, you can't write a food twice, but you fill in any fibre source you've had. There's a bit of instruction on the sheet. You fill it in and you try and you get 3 different sources of fibre in a week. And that is to promote good gut health and obviously immunity and everything else. But yeah, it's a good way to self-assess if you are getting the diversity in your diet. So 13/7, and that's on passionatenutrition.co.uk. And I do speak in terms of organisations with mental health, so nourishminds.co.uk is mine as well. I'm on Facebook and Instagram as Passion number 8 Nutrition. And I've got quite a few links of different things, so if anybody wants to ask any questions about any of those. And that's me. How are we for time?
20 to 8.
Oh, that's perfect then, 'cause we're supposed to be eating now.
Oh, perfect. I'll let them know.
So have a think about any questions that you've got to ask. I have probably given you so much information there, and hopefully it's not information overload. And hopefully there's a lot of tips. But if you, like I say, any recipes you can look on the site. But we've got some time after for some questions. Have a think. Please ask me some questions after. But hopefully we can eat now.